There's something you should know about humans. They're not what you think. Certainly not what the Silithar thought. Poor things. You see, in a galaxy filled with advanced species, humans were, well, just another group of sentient creatures trying to get by. They weren't the strongest, nor the most intelligent. They didn't have the best technology. Frankly, most galactic civilizations didn't pay much attention to them. They were new, unremarkable. Or so it seemed. The Silithar, now they were something else. A telepathic, highly organized race of towering, insectoid beings with shimmering exoskeletons. They prided themselves on meticulous planning, precision, and above all, avoiding conflict at all costs. Conflict was messy, inefficient. The Silithar despised inefficiency. They thought humans were primitive, unpredictable, inferior. And the Silithar hated unpredictability almost as much as inefficiency. When they decided to acquire a small human outpost, they expected things to go smoothly. Why wouldn't they? Their minds were synchronized, their strategies perfect. The humans, on the other hand, seemed disorganized, emotional, prone to irrational decisions. Easy pickings, or so the Silithar believed. The plan was simple. A quick, peaceful acquisition of the human outpost. The Silithar believed humans would comply. How could they not? The Silithar had technology far beyond anything the humans could comprehend. Their telepathic communication was light years ahead of the clumsy verbal exchanges of human language. It was supposed to be straightforward. But, as we're about to see, humans don't do straightforward. As the Silithar prepared for their mission, their leaders exchanged silent, synchronized thoughts. No need for words. They visualized the human outpost small, insignificant. An easy victory. The humans wouldn't know what hit them. The Silithar would walk in, make their demands, and the humans would roll over. Simple, except it wasn't. Oh. The Silithar underestimated humans in a way that would go down in the history books, well, at least human history books. The Silithar don't like to talk about it much. They thought humans were soft, that their apparent disorganization was a weakness. The Silithar were meticulous planners humans they assumed weren't. It was their first mistake. When the Silithar's elite squad arrived, they were ready for a smooth operation. After all, what could go wrong? They had their superior technology, telepathic communication, and an ironclad plan. The humans were expected to either surrender or scatter like frightened animals. Except humans don't scatter. They hunt. As the Silithar landed, they made the first move, a calculated infiltration of the outpost. A group of towering, gleaming Silithar soldiers moved silently through the night, their thoughts in perfect synchronization, expecting little to no resistance. But something was off. The humans weren't where they were supposed to be. The Silithar paused, confused, searching the area. Then it happened. The ground beneath them shook. An explosion lit up the night sky, followed by another, and another. Before the Silithar squad could react, half of them were down, ensnared in crude but effective human traps. The humans were supposed to be inferior, yet somehow they had laid a trap. A brilliant, deadly trap. As the Silithar commander struggled to make sense of the chaos, he realized something chilling the humans hadn't run. They had prepared for this. They were waiting. It wasn't an accident, it wasn't luck, it was a trap. The Silithar, so confident in their superiority, had walked straight into it. You see, the thing about humans is that they don't think like other species. The Silithar were used to precision, logic, and planning. Humans, though, they improvise. In the midst of chaos, they thrive. They use whatever's at hand. A stick, a rock, or in this case, some rather rudimentary explosives. The Silithar, with all their advanced technology, had no answer for such unpredictability. One of the surviving Silithar soldiers stumbled back, trying to make sense of it all. How could such a disorganized species have pulled this off? The humans shouldn't have stood a chance, yet here they were, turning the tables in a spectacular fashion. But that was just the beginning. As the battle raged on, the Silithar found themselves outmatched not by superior firepower, but by human ingenuity. The humans weren't the scattered, panicked creatures the Silithar expected. They were predators. And when you're up against a predator, you'd better be ready to fight for your life. The Silithar, for all their brilliance, were now facing something they hadn't accounted for: human adaptability. The humans didn't follow the rules of engagement. They made their own rules. They didn't rely on rigid tactics. They improvised. And that made them far more dangerous than the Silithar had ever imagined. You see, humans have this knack for turning the tables. When the Silithar thought they had the upper hand, the humans shifted the playing field. One minute, the Silithar were advancing. The next, they were retreating, caught off guard by traps they couldn't predict and tactics they couldn't comprehend. The Silithar commander watched in horror as his elite squad was decimated. And to make matters worse, the humans were laughing. Laughing. Amidst the chaos, amidst the destruction, the humans found humor. One human even waved a makeshift weapon in the air, grinning as he hurled it towards the remaining Silithar. It was a spear. A primitive, ridiculous weapon by the Silithar standards. And yet that spear, outfitted with some sort of explosive device, took down 2 more Silithar soldiers. How? The Silithar couldn't fathom it. How could a species so primitive be so dangerous? As the remaining Silithar retreated, one thing became abundantly clear: they had made a grave mistake. Humans weren't just survivors. They weren't the weak, disorganized beings the Silithar had assumed them to be. They were hunters. And the Silithar had become their prey. The humans, it seemed, were just getting started. The Silithar had faced only a small group of them scouts, really. Not the full human military force. That was still out there, waiting. If the Silithar couldn't handle the scouts, what chance did they stand against the entire human fleet? The Silithar commander, now one of the few survivors, reflected on what had happened. He had underestimated them. They all had. Humans weren't like other species. They didn't follow the rules. They didn't care about strategy or precision. They cared about one thing: survival. And when it came to survival, humans were ruthless. The Silithar had learned a valuable, albeit painful, lesson. They had underestimated the humans, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. Or so they thought. As the humans regrouped, there was no celebration, no cheers of victory. They knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and the Silithar were only one of many species out there. But now, the humans had shown what they were capable of, and they knew there would be more battles to come. So, if you're ever thinking about crossing paths with humans, maybe think again. Or at the very least, bring extra reinforcements. You're going to need them. The Silithar had spent eons perfecting their methods. Everything about them was efficiency. Communication, silent and swift, required no spoken words. Their shimmering exoskeletons gleamed under the faint light as their collective thoughts passed between them, synchronized and orderly. For them, conflict was a formality, a transaction they controlled with precision and planning. Their telepathic connection allowed them to move as one, unspoken decisions flowing seamlessly through the ranks. As they prepared for the acquisition of the human outpost, they did so with the confidence that came from centuries of unchallenged dominance. The humans were newer to the galactic scene, and the Silithar considered them unremarkable, a minor annoyance at best. The Silithar didn't anticipate resistance. They didn't anticipate anything unusual at all. Their intelligence reports suggested the humans were disorganized, their technology inferior. It was a peaceful acquisition, after all. No need for excessive force. The humans, in their primitive way, would see reason and comply. The Silithar commander stood silently, observing the human encampment from a distance, his mind analyzing the scene. Humans were scattered, walking around in what seemed to be random patterns. A few gathered around a fire, laughing, completely unaware of the impending encounter. The commander's cold, calculating mind couldn't comprehend such behavior. What were they doing? Was this some primitive ritual before they inevitably surrendered? He paused, watching the human who casually poked the fire with a stick, chuckling with his companions. How absurd. Did they not realize their insignificance in the grand scheme of things? The Silithar commander's thoughts rippled through the collective. Surely this was the behavior of a species resigned to their fate. The humans would fall in line just as countless others had before. The elite Silithar squad began its infiltration. Their movements were silent, perfectly choreographed, as they advanced toward the human outpost. Cloaking devices activated, their shimmering forms fading into the night. The plan was simple. Approach. Make their presence known. Present the terms of acquisition. The humans would have no choice but to surrender. Why fight? They were inferior in every way. But the humans weren't preparing for defeat. As the Silithar operatives moved closer, something shifted. There was a stillness, a subtle change in the air that the Silithar, in their overconfidence, failed to notice. They had planned for everything, or so they thought. But humans have a knack for doing the unexpected. The first explosion was sudden, piercing the quiet night with a sharp, deafening roar. The Silithar, trained for all manner of combat, hesitated for the briefest moment. It was a moment too long. Another explosion followed, then another. The elite squad was scattered, their synchronization shattered by the chaos erupting around them. Their telepathic link buzzed with confusion. The humans had set a trap. Far from being disorganized, the humans had outthought their would-be conquerors. The Silithar commander's thoughts raced as he tried to recalibrate. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. The humans weren't running, weren't surrendering. They were fighting back, and worse, they were winning. The commander's mind scanned the battlefield. Human ingenuity was on full display. They had taken simple, rudimentary tools and turned them into deadly weapons. A wire, strung between two trees, had brought down one of the Silithar's elite. Explosives, crudely fashioned but devastatingly effective, had been hidden in the most unexpected places. The Silithar were creatures of precision, but here they faced a force that thrived in chaos. The humans didn't follow the rules of engagement that the Silithar had so carefully crafted. They didn't fight with order or predictability. They fought with instinct, with cunning, and with a level of improvisation that the Silithar had never encountered before. The humans weren't defending, they were hunting. One Silithar soldier, cloaked and nearly invisible, moved forward, determined to regain control. But just as he activated his weapon, a human whistle cut through the air, followed by another explosion. The soldier, who had been moments away from striking, was thrown off balance, his cloaking device flickering and failing. He barely had time to react before a spear accrued. Human-made spear lodged itself into his exoskeleton with shocking precision. Primitive, yes, but deadly all the same. As the battle unfolded, it became clear to the Silithar that they were outmatched in ways they couldn't comprehend. The humans didn't need superior technology or numbers. They had something far more dangerous: adaptability. The Silithar fought by the book, but the humans, they wrote their own rules. They used the landscape, the darkness, and their own ingenuity to their advantage, turning the Silithar's meticulous planning into a liability. In the face of such unexpected resistance, the Silithar found themselves retreating. The humans weren't just surviving, they were winning, and they were doing it with tools and tactics the Silithar hadn't thought possible. As another explosion rocked the ground beneath them, the Silithar commander's thoughts raced. How could they have been so wrong? This was supposed to be a simple acquisition, a demonstration of the Silithar's superiority. But here, on this backwater planet, the Silithar had encountered something far more dangerous than they had ever anticipated. Humans were not prey. They were predators, and the hunt had only just begun. The Silithar were creatures of logic, driven by strategy and perfection. But as the ambush unfolded, it became painfully clear to them that their calculations had been fatally flawed. Humans, they now realized, could not be measured by the usual standards. Their appearance fragile, unarmored, primitive had been deceptive. The Silithar had prepared for a clean, predictable encounter, one they believed would end quickly and efficiently. What they faced instead was something they could never have anticipated. The Silithar commander processed the unfolding chaos through his telepathic link. Humans, with their seemingly outdated weapons and unpredictable tactics, had turned the situation on its head. The commander had never encountered an opponent like this, one that defied logic and strategy at every turn. The humans weren't just surviving, they were thriving in the chaos, adapting on the fly. For the Silithar, who had prided themselves on precise planning, it was unsettling. In the midst of battle, human ingenuity was on full display. The Silithar, clad in high-tech armor designed to withstand advanced energy weapons, found themselves undone by weapons that should have been laughably ineffective. Spears, but not just any spears, explosive-tipped spears, thrown with unnerving accuracy. The first strike had taken them by surprise, piercing the armor of one Silithar soldier and detonating with deadly force. How could such a primitive tool be so effective? The commander reeled, the calculations faltering as more of his soldiers fell. Improvised explosives, attached to seemingly outdated projectiles, were raining down on them. One by one, his elite squad was being reduced to wreckage by weapons the Silithar hadn't even considered a threat. How had they miscalculated so badly? And then there was the humans' response to their own success. As one Silithar soldier fell, a human grinned, pulling the pin on yet another grenade. Primitive, the human muttered under his breath, tossing the explosive with a casual, almost playful air. The absurdity of the scene was not lost on the commander. In the middle of what should have been a swift and decisive conflict, the humans were cracking jokes. They didn't fear the Silithar. They didn't even seem to take them seriously. The humans adapted with a speed and creativity that the Silithar, for all their advancements, couldn't match. Every time the Silithar thought they had regained control, the humans shifted the game. A trap here, an improvised weapon there, always something new and unpredictable. The Silithar fought by their training, adhering to a strict set of rules and strategies. The humans, it seemed, followed no rules at all. They did whatever worked, and what worked was devastating. The humans' resourcefulness extended beyond just their weapons. They used the terrain, setting ambushes in places the Silithar hadn't even considered. They manipulated their environment in ways that confused the highly organized minds of their enemies. The Silithar commander could feel the rising panic among his troops, the sense of control slipping away with each passing moment. Their superior technology meant nothing if they couldn't predict what the humans would do next. And that was the core of it, wasn't it? Humans were unpredictable. The Silithar had expected to face a species that would react logically, predictably. They had prepared for a straightforward conflict, one they could control. But humans didn't react that way. They didn't follow the script the Silithar had written for them. They adapted. They improvised. They survived. The Silithar, on the other hand, were rigid. Their strategies were flawless until they weren't. And now, in the face of an enemy that refused to play by the rules, those strategies were falling apart. As the humans pressed their advantage, the commander struggled to understand how it had all gone so wrong. He could feel the collective thoughts of his remaining soldiers, the uncertainty, the fear. They were supposed to be the dominant species. They had the superior weapons, the superior intellect. But none of that mattered when facing an opponent who turned every weakness into a strength. One human, covered in dirt and grime, tossed an improvised explosive into a group of Silithar soldiers with a grin. Boom, he whispered to himself, as if amused by the simplicity of it all. The explosive detonated, sending armored Silithar flying in every direction. The commander flinched, not from the blast itself, but from the realization that his once perfect plan was in tatters. The humans weren't supposed to be capable of this. Their weapons weren't supposed to work. And yet here they were, turning the tide of battle with what could only be described as sheer audacity. It wasn't that the humans had better weapons or better tactics. It was that they didn't care what the Silithar thought. They fought in ways that defied expectation, in ways that made no sense to the cold, calculating minds of their enemies. And that made them dangerous. Incredibly dangerous. The commander's mind raced, searching for a way to turn the battle around, but the humans gave him no time to think. They moved too quickly, too unpredictably. Every time he tried to reorganize his troops, the humans were already one step ahead, setting another trap, hurling another improvised weapon. The battlefield, which had once been under the Silithar's control, was now a nightmare of chaos and destruction. The humans moved through it with ease, adapting to every twist and turn, while the Silithar struggled just to survive. It was in that moment that the commander realized the full extent of their mistake. They had underestimated not just the humans' weapons or tactics, but their very nature. The Silithar had assumed that superior technology and organization would guarantee victory. But humans didn't need those things. They had something far more powerful: the ability to adapt, to learn, to turn even the most desperate situation to their advantage. And they were doing just that. The tide had turned. What had started as a defense became something entirely different. The humans, once scrambling to survive, now took the fight to the Silithar. The air was thick with the sounds of battle, but it was the humans' actions that stood out. They weren't reacting anymore, they were leading. Each human movement was calculated but instinctive, designed to confuse and terrify their alien adversaries. For the Silithar, this was chaos. They had always been in control. Their telepathic minds worked in perfect harmony, and every enemy they'd faced before had crumbled under their precision. But humans weren't like any other species. Their unpredictability, the sheer audacity of their tactics, sent shockwaves through the Silithar ranks. One moment, the humans were defending a position; the next, they were ambushing from another. There was no pattern, no logic that the Silithar could grasp. The humans pressed forward, exploiting every weakness, every gap in the Silithar's rigid formations. It was as if they could see through the alien strategies, picking them apart with unnerving ease. The Silithar commander struggled to understand what was happening. His troops, designed for perfection, faltered under the humans' relentless advance. The humans were supposed to break, to flee, but instead, they were hunting. You see, the Silithar had forgotten something fundamental. Humans didn't just evolve to survive. They evolved as predators. Every step they took in this fight wasn't about defense, it was about pursuit, about finding the enemy's weak point and striking without hesitation. The Silithar had assumed humans were inferior because their technology was crude, their tactics disorganized. But they had overlooked the truth: humans were hunters at heart. And now they had new prey. The Silithar commander could feel the shift in the collective mind of his troops. Fear. A concept foreign to their species, but now all too real. The humans didn't fight like any enemy they had encountered. They didn't rely on technology or numbers. They relied on instincts, on the ability to adapt to any situation. And now those instincts had turned the battle into a nightmare for the Silithar. It didn't take long for the humans to figure out the Silithar's tactics. They were methodical, predictable, and once the humans understood that, they began to turn the Silithar's own strategies against them. They used the aliens' telepathic communication to their advantage, creating confusion by splitting their forces, forcing the Silithar to react to phantom threats. While the Silithar hesitated, the humans struck, exploiting every moment of indecision. The Silithar commander's mind raced. Every calculation told him the same thing: they were losing. His forces, once the pride of the galaxy, were crumbling before a species they had considered primitive. He had never imagined that humans, with their chaotic methods and seemingly inferior tools, could do this. But as his soldiers fell, one after another, it became undeniable. The humans weren't just surviving, they were winning. In the face of such overwhelming opposition, the Silithar had no choice but to retreat. The collective thoughts of the remaining soldiers were in disarray, their perfect synchronization shattered by the relentless human assault. As the Silithar commander gave the order to withdraw, he could hardly believe it. The humans had outwitted them, outmaneuvered them, and they had done it with tactics that defied logic. The Silithar pulled back, their once imposing ranks now a scattered retreat. But as they fled, something even more unsettling became clear. This wasn't the human military. These weren't warriors or soldiers. They were scouts, mere scouts sent ahead to survey the area. The realization sent a ripple of shock through the Silithar's collective mind. If this was what the human scouts were capable of, What would happen when their full force arrived? The commander's thoughts echoed in the silence of the retreat. How had they been so blind? They had dismissed the humans as primitive, assuming that their superior technology and telepathic coordination would guarantee victory. But they hadn't counted on the humans' ability to adapt, to improvise, to turn even the simplest tools into deadly weapons. And now they were running from a species they had underestimated at every turn. As the Silithar ships began to lift off, the battlefield below them fading into the distance, one human stood atop a ridge, watching their retreat. With a lazy wave, he called out, "That's it? Thought you guys were supposed to be tough." His voice, filled with a mix of amusement and triumph, carried across the battlefield. Even in their moment of victory, the humans found a way to laugh. The Silithar commander, now miles above the planet's surface, could only watch as the humans celebrated below. The thought of what might come next gnawed at him. If this had been a mere scouting party, what horrors awaited them when the full human military arrived? For now, the Silithar could retreat. But the humans had shown something far more dangerous than advanced technology or military strength. They had shown their true nature and adaptability, a resilience that no strategy could fully counter. The Silithar had underestimated their prey, and it was a mistake they would not soon forget. As the Silithar fled, the humans regrouped on the ground, their victory palpable but understated. There were no grand celebrations, no parades of triumph, just a knowing look passed between them, a shared understanding that this battle was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and the Silithar were only one of many species out there. The humans had proven their strength here, but they knew more challenges awaited. In the quiet that followed the retreat, the narrator's voice returned, reflective and wry. You see, the Silithar learned a hard lesson today, one they'll remember for a long time. They thought they were dealing with another predictable species, something they could understand and control. But humans, well, they're a little different. They don't fight by the rules. They don't play the game the way others do. The scene shifted, panning across the battlefield, littered with the wreckage of Silithar technology and the smoldering remains of their once formidable soldiers. The narrator continued, a tone of amusement slipping in. Humans are hunters, not just survivors. They've spent millennia evolving, adapting to their environments, and turning challenges into opportunities. And when they're pushed, they push back harder. Much harder. A silence lingered as the weight of what had just transpired settled in. The humans, with their resilience and unpredictability, had turned what should have been a massacre into a rout for their enemies. The Silithar, for all their advanced technology and synchronized minds, had been completely unprepared for the ferocity and ingenuity of the human response. And so the narrator mused, if anyone else out there in the galaxy is thinking about making the same mistake the Silithar did, maybe they should think twice. Humans aren't just another species to conquer. They're something else entirely, something dangerous. As the humans began to prepare for whatever would come next, the narrator left the audience with one final thought, a sardonic smile in their voice. This was just a scouting party. Just wait until the real fun begins. And with that, the story closed on an ominous note, the galaxy now aware of what humans were truly capable of. This wasn't the end, it was just the beginning.